How many cowards and weaklings do you have among your cultural laborers, who participate only because of their cowardice and weakness, but at heart would like to do something else, if their anxiety would permit them? Hey everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video I will be discussing the fourth volume of Carl Jung's Black Books. So if this is your first video about the Black Books, then as a short introduction I would like to mention that the Black Books, they consist of 7 volumes written by Carl Jung between 1913 and 1932, and they're actually not available to the general public until the end of 2020, when Sonu Shamdasani, the editor, published an edited edition. And as he mentioned himself, the editor at the back of the book said they were the most important unpublished works written by Carl Jung up until that point. And in this series of 7 videos, of which this is the 4th one, I discuss each of these volumes separately. So throughout the 3rd volume of the Black Book, some interesting interactions between Carl Jung and characters emerging from his interaction with the unconscious are presented to the reader. Jung is finally able to have the interactions with his unconscious that he was seeking, and he reached this point by first letting go of his reliance on scientific truth, and secondly by looking at the places where he least wanted to look. And these interactions, they continue throughout the 4th volume of the Black Books, and it becomes clear that Carl Jung is gradually becoming more comfortable and confident during these interactions, and perhaps even a bit too confident at sometimes. Carl Jung, he appears a lot less afraid of the characters, and he's capable to engage in some interesting discussions with these characters. At the beginning of the 4th volume, Carl Jung addresses the ideas of Friedrich Nietzsche in an interaction with a librarian. The librarian argues that although religions have lost their importance to a significant degree, authors such as Nietsche have been able to fill this void by writing their own books of prayers. In the case of Nietzsche, this was of course Das Spoke Zarathustra. Carl Jung, however, argues that Nietzsche's philosophy can only fill this void for a select group of individuals, those that are too constrained and require more freedom and independence. He wrote, "Nietzsche's truth strikes me as too agitated and provocative. It's good for those who are yet to be set free. Another group of people, those that are perhaps too free, they require a different philosophy according to Carl Jung, one that provides them with a certain set of boundaries and a certain kind of resignation." He wrote, "I've recently discovered that we also need a truth for those who need constraint. It's possible that instead they need a depressive truth, which makes man smaller and more inward." I believe that Carl Jung, throughout his work, explored such a truth extensively, whereas Nietzsche's philosophy was aimed at making man feel more superior and motivating them to remove all chains, including those from societies and religions. Jung was in some ways developing a philosophy which addressed the inferiority of man, an inferiority which resulted from man being under a strong influence of the unconscious forces of the soul. At the same time, however, once one was aware of this inferiority, it could also be really empowering. One example found in the 4th volume of the Black Books is the recognition of madness. Jung wrote, "Let the light of your madness shine, and it will suddenly dawn on you. Madness is not to be despised and not to be feared, but instead you should give it life." Carl Jung, he believed that everyone is filled with madness to some degree, and the sooner one recognizes this, the better it is. Moreover, according to Jung, striving towards reason is often useless, and in part merely done in order to feel less inferior. He wrote, "Man strives toward reason only so that he can make rules for himself. Life itself has no rules. That is its mystery. What you call knowledge is your attempt to impose something comprehensible on life." In this sense, I believe that Carl Jung managed to create a philosophy which was a great addition to the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche, whereas Nietzsche empowered man by indicating in which ways humans can be powerful and independent. Jung indicated in which ways humans can be vulnerable and powerless, and the black books, they are an important source of this philosophy of Jung. In a similar way, according to Jung, we should not try to find meaning and truth all the time. Instead, we should just live the truth. He wrote, "We create the truth by living it. Only in retrospect life becomes truth. We do not find truth first and then we live it, but the other way around." Equally, we should embrace all aspects of life and respect that one aspect cannot be without the other. Jung wrote, "Life should proceed from birth to death and from death to birth, from sense to madness and from madness to sense. Unbroken, like the path of the sun. Everything should proceed on this path." It was also interesting to note that while Carl Jung was having these interactions with his own unconscious, which might of course seem like a certain sort of madness, Jung was purposely also trying to live a normal life. He wrote, "Thereafter I walk on like a man who stands, and who expects something new that he has never suspected before. I listen to the depths, warned, instructed, and undaunted, outwardly striving to lead a full human life." Carl Jung's soul asked him whether he was willing to accept everything which she would give him. As Jung affirmed throughout the other volumes as well, he became more willing to do so and was open to everything. He wrote, "I will gratefully accept what you give, my soul. I do not have the right to judge or reject. Fate will separate the wheat from the chaff. We have to subjugate ourselves also to the judgments of valuelessness, and destruction in majorem vitea gloriam, to the greater glory of life." Eventually, Jung believed that he had accomplished quite a lot already through his interactions with the figures of his unconscious. His soul, however, pointed out to him that he still had a long way to go. "It seems to me as if I look back as onto the work that has been accomplished. Shall I look back yet? How curious you are, nothing is accomplished yet." "What do you mean, not accomplished?" "This is only the beginning." Despite encouraging a philosophy of humility and resignation, Jung continued to worry about the meaninglessness of his own endeavor, which he also did in the third volume. In an interaction with his unconscious, it was pointed out to him that everyone has the possibility to discover what was taking place in his or her own unconscious, but this might be too demanding of a task for most. He wrote, "Everyone has the ability to find out what is taking place, but not everyone can afford to pay the price. It is quite exhausting." Jung worried whether the price that he was paying would actually be worth it. He wrote, "The uncertainty and unpredictability are difficult to bear. Naturally, but who says it is an easy load to carry? If one wants to create the future and not just live it." This uncertainty is, however, inevitable, and Jung wrote, "Even the value of what you do is doubtful. Inevitably so, because you have no means to judge the value of present things in any way. That only manifests itself later if things are of value at all. One needs to live with uncertainty." At the end of the fourth volume of the Black Books, Carl Jung shares an interesting interaction with a shepherd. The shepherd, he lives far removed from civilization, and Jung asks him whether he does not mind this primitive way of living, and whether he does not miss civilization and culture. The shepherd indicates that he does not miss anything. Despite the harshness of living a rather primitive life, he does not miss anything because his life provides him with more than enough meaning, resulting exactly from this harshness. Jung questions, however, whether the shepherd will not be able to live a better, more fulfilling life within society, because only then he will be able to fulfill his true potential, according to Jung. The shepherd, however, he does not agree and indicates that he enjoys his free life in nature. He argues, "You might be right, but this wonderful free life, one can't let it go. Life in the cities means deformity. One more or less in civilization. What difference does the individual make?" The shepherd even argues that if people would be more courageous and would pursue what they really wanted, then more people would actually be living like him. He argued, "How many cowards and weaklings do you have among your cultural laborers, who participate only because of their cowardice and weakness, but at heart would like to do something else, if their anxiety would permit them?" The shepherd indicates that one of the biggest advantages of his way of life is that he can complete something that that there are not unlimited tasks and unlimited opportunities, which once fulfilled culminate in only more tasks and opportunities. He argues, I returned back to the finite, back to limited human life, where the task and the life burn out together. I threw off the impossible and came back to the possible. So to conclude, I believe that the fourth volume of the Black Books is interesting to read because we can clearly see that Carl Jung is acquiring an increasing amount of confidence to interact with the figures of the unconscious. Jung, however, also becomes a bit too confident at times, and he's often reminded that what he's doing is only the beginning of his journey. However, by challenging the figures which he encounters in his unconscious a bit more, Jung is able to have increasingly more interesting conversations. And what I personally find most interesting in Jung's discussion throughout the fourth volume is his discussion of the ideas of Nietzsche with the Librarian. And from this discussion we can deduct that Nietzsche empowered man by indicating in which ways humans can be more powerful and independent, while Jung indicated through his philosophy in which ways humans can actually be more vulnerable and powerless. According to Jung, the latter might be more important to some people. And the conversation with the shepherd is extremely interesting as well, and I think that we can conclude that Carl Jung was also contemplating a life removed from society. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions about this discussion, then please let me know as well. If you do not want to miss the discussion and analysis of the other volumes, then please consider subscribing to this channel as well. And yeah, I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you.